Hi Trish. Hi Catch Up Crew.
Tara, earlier I heard you say that Andy's hair looks a lot like mine, and I have Andy right below me right now, and I'm like, yeah, should I go put on my red tank top or?
Take off your glasses real quick.
Oh.
It is uncanny.
Oh, I'm glad you had such a nice birthday. That sounds really lovely. And like a good girl and getting some cuddles is always good.
Yeah, it was nice.
How's everyone's day been?
So tired. I'm getting rid of everything that I can get rid of. Like now that Rory helped move all of the shit out of this room is empty and has no 5 couches in it. I already got rid of 1 broken bin, 3 broken suitcases, and a broken amp. And tomorrow someone's gonna pick up a broken computer and 4 broken chandeliers. People want a lot of broken stuff for some reason.
Yeah, like your landlord apparently.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I just hope that like no other landlord buys it and then puts it in someone else's flat. That would really suck.
Can you imagine you end up going searching for your next flat and you get the keys to move in and you open the door and it's all the exact same furniture just sitting there.
That would be very upsetting. And kind of something like what I thought about that, like the whole all the time I'm fixing things in this flat and I'm trying to make it a bit nicer and so on. And the whole time I kind of just want to write like some slam poetry about all of the landlords I've ever had. Like I don't know, like just like 2 broken hoovers do not make one functioning one, you know, like just a small rant about that, or just
do it.
I would love to hear that poem. You should absolutely do that poem.
I just wanted like a whole slam poetry night, like with everyone sharing some stuff, and I can like add some of my rants in there. But yeah, I feel like Renter's Poetry Slam edition is overdue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm also on the tired wave. One of the things today that I did was I took a survey about surveys / partial interview, and it was about questions around gender and sexuality on surveys and wording and stuff like that, and how to make things the least shitty as possible. And it was frustrating seeing things like, okay, I get that some people, when they say bisexual, define it as men and women, but it doesn't mean we should have bisexual and they're twice, once meaning men and women and once meaning my own and other genders. Wouldn't it just make more sense to just ask about it with the correct definition and not spread the information wrong, and then have an open-ended question of, are there people you wouldn't date? And then you can catch all the transphobes and don't have to be like, would you not date a trans person and not let that be a valid opinion that people can have without them having to bring it up themselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it got me a little riled up, but in a good way. And the person doing the survey is non-binary, and it's supposed to be sent to make recommendations to the census questions and stuff like that. So I'm excited about that shit.
That's very cool.
Yeah. What did everybody else get up to today?
Doing it, even though it was annoying. It's important to give people those answers.
Yeah.
Oh man, that reminds me, I'm gonna have to write the don't start calling your character by masculine pronouns suddenly thing. Yeah, for people who don't know, I'm beta reading a book. Well, I finished it now, and there's a character who I can say now because I've finished the book is trans. Like, this person has not worn masculine clothing since she was a child, and yeah, suddenly the author starts using masculine pronouns for them like 3/4 of the way through the book. I'm like, what? So I think the author is well-intentioned. So I think she can probably take on board what I have to say if I say it well. But yeah.
Yeah, it's an uncomfortable thing to bring up for sure, but good on you for bringing it up.
I can't really not if I'm going to give any feedback at all.
Okay, it is indeed story time. Story time. Story time.
Story time?
Story to me. Okay, I'll stop. You all ready for another edition of The Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy? We left off and they had just walked in the door and had dealt with a very rude butler. So Sim and Felicity are just sort of trying to navigate their way through this place. So you've only got one chance at this, so make it count. I'd make it count even if I had 20, thank you. And you wonder why I worry about your charming your way into a wedding party, she murmurs, and I truly cannot tell if she's about to smile or grimace. The butler returns before I can reply, leaving Sim aggravatingly with the last word. I'm escorted into a sitting room off the entryway and seated upon a sofa. I try to neither settle too far back upon it, nor sit too close to the edge, wishing for perhaps the first time that I actually had sat a lesson at the finishing school my father was determined to send me, just to better create the illusion of ladyship. There are so many invisible layers to decorum that you don't think of until you're staring them down across a fancy parlour. I have never done any sofa sitting in my life that felt as though it mattered as much as this. There are footsteps in the hallway and I stand, expecting the butler, but instead, in prances a dog the size of the sofa. Gangly limbs and swinging jowls and a coiffure of a tail that bobs above him like a feather in a jaunty cap. His coat is shiny with care, blemished only by the bubbles of saliva gathering at the folds of his lips. The dog bounds over to me and presses his head into my knee with such enthusiasm that I promptly sit down again on the sofa, which only delights him further, for it makes my face more accessible to his mouth. He leaps at me with what I guess from his tail and perked ears is joy at the prospect of a new friend. But he's overly zealous and comes at me with his enormous jaws gaping wide. I shriek without meaning to, though, in my defence, what rational being wouldn't when approached by an open mouth in which your whole head could fit? Maximus, down! Off, get off her! Max, come here! The dog is wrangled off me, our only connection the long strings of drool that run between my mouth and my shoulders. Sorry, he's harmless. He's such a big love. He just wants to be chums with everyone and doesn't seem to realise he's bigger than they are. I look up, and she looks up at the same time from where she's crouched on the floor with her arms around the neck of her dog. And there is Joanna Hoffman. It is not so long ago that we have been apart. It is not so long that we've been apart, but in this moment, our 2 years of separation feel more enormous than all the years we spent together. The difference between 14 and 16 feels like centuries. Time, the greatest distance that can stretch between two people. There is no chance I would not have recognised her, but somehow she's a different person from my memories. Her hair is the same brown, so dark it's almost black, eyes hooded and deep green. But it's like she's better settled into her own skin. She was a round child with spotty cheeks adolescence wasn't kind to. But either time or expensive milk baths or a very well-laced set of silk stays has made her into a Renaissance muse, shapely and curved in a way my stocky, geometric frame never will be. Even under the wide panniers at her waist, her hips swing, her face is powdered white with just the faintest hint of rouge, as though she's been caught in a maidenly blush. Or maybe she's blushing in earnest to see me. I might be as well, for even as I look at her in a bright, dreamy blue day dress with an embroidered bodice and a tiered skirt and 2 strings of pearls around her neck, all I can think of is the girl who used to walk barefoot with me in streams, never caring if her hem's muddied, who grabbed a snake by the throat and carried him off the road to save him from being bisected by a carriage, who went with me to the butcher's shop to watch them empty entrails from the pigs and cows and helped me understand how everything inside of a thing wound together. Joanna Hoffman had never minded dirt under her fingernails, until suddenly she had, and that was when she left me behind in favour of company she had decided was more appropriate for her new self. A part of me, I realise as she stands, one hand resting upon her massive dog's head, the only sound is him panting like a windstorm, had hoped that I would find her with muddy knees from running through the grounds, shoes worn through at the toes, her hair studded with twigs, and her pockets full of the baby birds she'd rescued when they fell from their nests. But instead, with her hair curled and her breasts pushed up, she's the cream puff that I cut all ties with. Felicity, she says, and zoons, I had forgotten how high her voice is. It was a sing-song soprano even when we were children, but in that excessive dress it feels put on, like she's playing up the girlish simper. I scrunch up my forehead without meaning to, then remember I am trying to win her over. I'm trying to remind her we were friends. Dear Lord, were we? Joanna, I say in return, and I make myself smile because she is marrying Dr. Platt, and I want to work for Dr. Platt, and there's no chance I'll ruin that by making a bad impression on the person who likely has the most influence over him. Or rather, I'll try not to ruin things any more than I did 2 years ago. It's good to see you. She does not return the smile. What are you doing here? What am I? That's actually a good story. So since we last saw each other, or rather, since you left, your father died, I'm sorry, is your dog all right? I'm trying not to stare at the saliva foaming upon his lips, but it's impossible not to. He's breathing rather heavily. Joanna doesn't look away from me, nor does she uncuff the beastie. He's fine. That's just how he sounds. Consumptive. Alpen Mastiffs have a lot of excess skin to breathe through. She reaches down and swipes a handful of slobber ribbons from under his mouth. And for a moment, there she is, my best friend who loved animals and feared no mess. But then she looks around for something to wipe her hands upon and, finding nothing, waves it about with her fingers splayed until the butler appears with a handkerchief. Then we're alone again, staring, each a ghost to the other. May I sit down? I ask. She gives me an indifferent shrug, so I resume my perch upon the couch. Max lunges forward, my face once again at the perfect angle for examining it with his tongue, but Joanna catches him by a roll of back fat. So many folds and so much hair I lose sight of her hand for a moment, and pulls him over with her to a chair, where she wraps her arms around his neck and rests her chin upon his head, pinning him in place. What are you doing here? She asks again, her eyes fixed on me. I'm here for your wedding. I thought you might write. I tried, but your gentleman said it didn't arrive, so I expect a week after your wed you'll get my missive about coming to your wedding. I don't mean about the wedding, she interrupts. I thought someday you might write to me, as a friend. A vein splits open inside of me, guilt and hurt spilling out in equal measure. I did, I say. About the wedding. She looks away, the tip of her tongue jutting out between her teeth. How did you hear I was getting married? Oh, you know, things travel around, gossip and... I stop. Joanna licks her lips. Max also licks his, tongue wrapping all the way around his nose. I've been at school, I say, which is the lie I decided upon, for it most closely aligns with what I am currently supposed to be doing. It's unlikely that Joanna, so far from home, would have heard about my disappearance during my tour, and even unlikelier that, had she known, she would have run to my father and put an X upon the map for him to mark my location. Most unlikely of all, that he would care. But lies are easiest to believe and to remember when they bump against the truth, and school is a good excuse for my limited wardrobe. School, she smiles, and it is the first time she looked like herself. You finally got to go. I mean, it's not quite... Yes, it's not worth digging into the injustices of the fact that the school I should have currently been attending is one for manners and not medicine. Yes, I go to school. And you have a giant dog. And you're getting married. That's a thing that is happening, and that's wonderful for you. It's so wonderful, just wonderful, that we both got what we wanted. She finishes for me. Did we? I want to shout at her. Because once we wanted to go on an expedition together and collect previously unknown medical plants and species and bring them back to London to be cultivated and studied. I thought I had long ago cut Joanna from me like a cancer, but you cannot simply hack yourself apart in hopes of healing faster. Best to not have friends at all, I remind myself. Best to explore the jungles alone. I am unraveling, and Joanna is still staring at me like I'm a spider crawled up from the floorboards and inching towards her. What I would like to say is that I remember when she aspired to more than a rich husband and domestic bliss. I remember how she audaciously declared that she would be the first woman to present before the Royal Society, that she would go on expeditions, bring new species home to England to study. I can't wait to meet your fiancé, I blurt. Dr. I fake a fumble for the name, like he hasn't been a saint to me for years, and like he's definitely not the reason I'm here. Platt, Joanna finishes for me. Alexander Platt. You don't have to pretend. Pretend what? That you don't know who he is. You love his books. You remember that? You wanted me to name that kitten I found under our house Alexander Platt, even though she was a girl. Alexander could be a gender-neutral name. I scratch the back of my neck. The collar of my dress feels very tight. I was hoping she had forgotten my obsession with Alexander Platt so that she could have no leverage against me. Knowing how much I want to meet him, how much I admire him, means she knows where to wound me. She knows how savage it would be to turn me out now. How did you two meet? He and my uncle are in business together. She mashes her thumbs behind the dog's ears, and he closes his eyes in bliss. Dr. Platt is organising a scientific expedition, and my uncle is providing the ship for the voyage. He came over for dinner one evening to discuss finances, and I was just smitten. She throws her hands up in the air like she's tossing confetti. I wonder if it's appropriate to ask how soon they're leaving and what research he's working on. All I want to ask about is Platt. But then Joanna pulls in her cheeks too hard and bites down upon them so that she looks like a fish. It's a nervous habit from childhood, one she used to do so often in the presence of her father that the insides of her cheeks would bleed. And for a moment, I'm 10 years old again, and I know her as well as I know the sound of my own voice. As much as I had told myself over and over that I wasn't here for Joanna, she didn't matter. I am here only for Platt and don't care what she thinks of me anymore. I suddenly found myself blurting. I should have written, Her face relaxes, lips falling back into their painted part. I swallow. I mean, I shouldn't have had to write because I should have apologized after your father died, before you left. I should have apologized. And we should have been writing each other all this time because we were friends. And I'm sorry I didn't do any of that. I wish you had. The dog rests his head upon her lap, and she strokes his nose absently, her eyes still on me. I'm sorry I'm here, I say. I can leave if you want. From out in the hallway, I swear I hear Sim choke. No, Joanna says quickly. No, don't leave. I want you to stay. I take perhaps my first deep breath since we left England, so loud it rivals Max's consumptive snuffles. Really? You sound surprised. I am. I mean, if I were you, I wouldn't want anything to do with me. She stands up, her hand disappearing again into the folds of her dog. Her skirts fan around her, a cascade of brocade silk and too many petticoats, the edges fringed with lace and bows. When she looks at me, I am disarmed. Well then, she says, and I don't know how I shall survive these next few days without drowning in her. Lucky you're not me. At dinner, I expect I shall get my first glimpse of Alexander Platt. The dining room is crowded, and I am relegated to a place of dishonour as far from the head of the table, where Joanna's uncle, Herr Hoffmann, sits, as is possible. I practically need a telescope to see him, and Joanna sitting beside him with another empty chair beside her, maddeningly empty, and no doubt reserved for her intended. It is still empty when the first course is served. It is still empty when the man beside me, who has to keep putting down his knife to pick up his ear trumpet, asks me, "How do you know, Miss Hoffman?" We were friends as children, I say, jamming a frustrated knife at my mutton. Excuse me. We grew up together, I say, louder. He cups a hand to the end of his ear trumpet. What? Friends! What? I nearly fling my knife down. We were accomplices in a massive diamond heist in which we stole jewels off the neck of the Queen of Prussia, and now I'm here to claim what is owed to me by any means necessary. Excuse me? The woman next to me leans forward in alarm, but the man just smiles. Oh, how nice. To top the fact that Alexander Platt is not even here, the dress Sim purchased in town was made with a waistline that can only be described as aspirational. Sim had to fish me out of the silk and tighten my stays 3 times before I achieved the inconceivably small diameter deemed appropriate for a lady to make an impression at a social occasion. My bulbous shoulders feel likely to burst free at any moment. It's hard to focus on the meal when I'm thinking about Dr. Platt, and when I can't properly breathe, and also every time Joanna laughs, my heartbeat stammers. How is it, I wonder, that the brain and the heart can be so at odds and yet have such a profound effect upon the functions of the other? Dr. Platt has still not arrived by the end of the dinner. The men go to their formal sitting room, while the ladies make their way upstairs. I, for longer than is natural, stand in the hallway, weighing my options, but likely looking as though I'm a shape-shifting fairy tale creature able to choose which sex I would rather be for the evening. If Dr. Platt is to show up, he will certainly not be up in Joanna's rooms with the ladies. And I am not here to waste time talking about ribbon and music and whatever other insubstantial nonsense gets passed around in rooms full of women. I start toward the parlour, hoping that if I walk with enough confidence, I'll not be stopped. But the hairy-eared butler has me by the collar before I've crossed the threshold. The ladies are upstairs, Miss Montague. Oh, I smile, but do not attempt the eyelash bat again. I've just got one quick thing to say to Herr Hoffman, and then I'll follow. He is unmoved. I can convey the message to him. Oh, thank you, but actually I lost an earring here earlier and I wanted to look for it. I'll search for you. I pretend to see someone in the room over his shoulder and wave. I'll be right in, I call to this imaginary person. The butler doesn't move. I consider faking a fainting spell just for an excuse to call for a doctor and hope it's Platt. But that hardly seems an appropriate situation to then funnel into an intellectual discussion. Please, I say to the butler, and I hate how pleading my voice sounds. I do not like pleading. Reliance upon the whims of others makes me far too vulnerable to feel comfortable. Excuse me, someone says behind me, and the butler pulls me out of the way so the man can pass into the room. I glance sideways and recognize him at once from the etching of his likeness on the title page of Treatise on Human Blood and its Movement Through the Body. Alexander Platt, I blurt. He stops, turns back to me. Can I help you? It's not a courteous question. It's brisk and annoyed. He looks exactly like himself, but more rumpled than I expected. He's unshaven, dark stubble in sharp contrast to his blonde wig with its ratty queue. His housecoat is not the sort of thing you'd wear to a party before your wedding, in which you're trying to make a good impression in the home of your bride. He has an intense gaze, small dark eyes made smaller by a fringe of thick brows, and when he frowns at me, I forget every word I know. All I manage to stammer is, "You're Alexander Platt." He flips the lid on the snuff box in his hand, glancing over his shoulder at the room full of gentlemen waiting for him. Do we know each other? I'm Joanna Hoffman. I'm a friend of Joanna's. I'm here for the wedding. Am I having a stroke? Not only are all the words I wish to say putting themselves in a random order in my brain, but I'm almost certain my voice is far too loud and my movements far too exaggerated. I've gone completely blank. All my planned brilliance with which I was going to win him over washed away at the sight of Alexander Platt in the flesh. He's looking at me, and all I can think to say is, "Hello," and it comes out much higher than my voice usually is. Perhaps this is how people feel when they talk to someone they fancy, all fluttery and silly and everything turned to the highest key. I've certainly heard Monty's voice pitch when Percy walked into a room. I remember suddenly I have Dr. Chiselden's card in my pocket, stashed there for exactly this meeting, and I start to paw at my excessively large skirt for it. "Dr. Platt, you join us at last," Joanna's uncle calls from the room, and Platt raises a hand. Before I've even had a chance to find my damn pocket, he gives me a nod and says, "Have a good night." Wait, no! I try to chase after him, but the butler catches me again. My arm whips out as he pulls me back, knocking a portrait off the wall. The glass cracks when it strikes the tile. Dr. Platt glances over his shoulder, and I'm not sure if I imagine it or if he actually winces. The butler stares at the broken frame, then at me. "I'll show myself to Miss Hoffman's rooms," I say, and slink away. There is a unique sort of agony to entering a party alone. It is the shuffle in, the survey, trying to spot allies in cracks in the fortress of guests where you might slide into a conversation with such ease that they will think you've been there all the while. It is the keen pinch of hanging in the doorway, knowing that people have seen you come in, but no one is pulling you over to their conversation or waving and greeting. Wondering if you can sidle up to the fringes of a conversation and laugh at just the right moment and they'll part. It is an even more pernicious pain when it comes upon the heels of the social equivalent of vomiting partially digested entrails upon my idol. Joanna's apartments are swarming with women from dinner, all with waists tinier and hair taller than mine. The aroma of scent bags and a garden of fragrances crowd the air. I haven't any powder on. I never wore it at my parents' house unless a maid managed to catch me off guard and blow a puff in my face. And my skin feels garishly ruddy and freckled in the presence of these girls dusted pale as icing sugar, with tiny pox patches spotting their cheeks. Their maids trail them, rearranging trains when they sit upon the silk couches, fetching them flutes of champagne, using a single finger wetted by a tongue to fix a smear of rouge. There are card tables, where whist and faro are being dealt. Another table is laid with bonbons, silky pink entremets topped with chocolate flakes sculpted like sparrows, gingerbread and salted toffees wrapped with spun sugar as fragile and translucent as the wings of a dragonfly, along with bottles of champagne and a pot of spiced wine. Joanna is both literally and figuratively in the centre of it all, talking to a small crowd of girls while others wait their turn to kiss her cheeks and offer her their congratulations. She drinks champagne and talks with her hands and speaks in arias. She wiggles her shoulders, points her tiny, perfect feet, sucks in her cheeks to make her face look thinner. It aggravates me, in the same way it did back in Cheshire, but not because she's putting on a party persona. It's because she's so bloody good at it. From his spot at the buffet table, Max galumps over to me, an enormous pink silk boa around my neck. He smashes his forehead into my knees until I consent to massage his ears. Then he walks over to the dessert table again and sits with an expectant look, as though his greeting me has made him worthy of a treat. I almost bolt. I want nothing more than to run back to my room and hide in a book the same way I have always done in the face of these gatherings. But I'm trying to make an impression. I'm trying to pretend I am an indoor cat. I am trying to get Dr. Platt, and since my impression was so disastrous, the best way to do that will be through Joanna. You are Felicity Montague, I remind myself. You had your brother tackled into the London harbour and found Alexander Platt and are absolutely going to make up for the embarrassing incident earlier. Since the knot of women around Joanna is too intimidating to breach just yet, I take a tentative seat on a couch near the door, next to a woman who looks a little older than me. She catches my eye and gives me an obligatory smile over her champagne. I look away. I'm then mortified that that was my reaction to being smiled at, and say too loudly and without introduction, "I like your eyebrows." I had spun a metal wheel and picked the least flattering feature to compliment a woman on. She looked surprised, as any person would at such a bizarre statement so loudly uttered. "Oh, thank you." She purses her lips, looks me up and down, and then said, "Yours are also nice." "Yes." I stare at her a moment longer. Then I nod too vigorously. Then I ask, "How many bones in the human body can you name?" And dear Lord, what is happening to me? Why don't I know how to talk politely to other women? "Excuse me." I flee to the food, take up a glass of spiced wine, and think about a pastry as well, but decide I'd rather not risk spilling something down my front. There's a knot of women standing by the dressing room staring at me. And when I look back at them, they all duck and giggle. And I hate these girls. I hate them so much. I hate the way they giggle and look at me when I don't. And then it feels as though I'm being laughed at and they're all in on it and I'm not. It's my whole childhood, being sneered at by watery girls for a joke I didn't understand because I was reading books they could never understand. For a woman who boasts that she doesn't give a fig what anyone else thinks of her, I certainly have a lot of party-related anxiety. Max seats himself upon my hem and looks up at me with his drooping eyes. The white spots above them make him look grotesquely expressive. You have very nice eyebrows, I tell him, and give him a flat-handed pat to the head. He licks his lips, then goes on staring at my glass. Of course, the moment I get around other females my own age, I end up socializing with the dog. Well, don't you look aggressively miserable? Someone says, and I turn. Joanna has extricated herself from her harem and come to stand beside me at the window. Max leans into her, his tail thumping happily between her backside and mine. It's a nice party. It is, she replies, reaching down to massage Max's head. So why do you look like you're having your teeth pulled? What's the matter? I consider lying, saying I'm tired from my trip or ate something at supper that didn't agree with me. A strange sort of instinct sets in when I meet her eyes. I used to tell Joanna everything. I'm so bad at this, I say. At what? This. I flap a general hand at the room full of women, talking to girls and socializing and being normal. You're normal. I'm not. I feel like a wild animal in a menagerie, ragged and feral and unsocialized among all these women who don't tip over in heels or itch the powder off their face. As Sim proclaimed, a crocodile in a cage full of swans. I'm prickly and off-putting and odd and not always nice. Joanna takes a macaron from the buffet table and licks a dab of filling off her finger. No one's good at these things. Everyone here is. Everyone is faking it, she says. Most of these women don't know each other. They likely all feel just as misplaced and awkward as you. You don't? Well, it's my party. But you're good at this, I say. You always have been. That's why people liked you back home, and not me. Girls like me are meant to have books instead of friends. Why can't you have both? She takes a bite of her macaron, then tosses the rest to Max, who, in spite of how large an area his mouth covers, misses it entirely and has to chase it down under the table. I think you need to give people a chance, including yourself. She reaches out and puts a light hand on my elbow. Promise me you'll stay tonight and at least try to have a good time. I run my tongue along my teeth, then let out a sigh through my nose. I feel like I owe this to her. And also, I'm completely maddened by that. I do not enjoy being beholden, so perhaps it's best if I pay off this debt as quickly as possible. Must I? And you have to talk to at least 3 people. All right, you're one. 3 people you don't already know. Max does not count, she says, reading my mind. If I talk to 3 people, may I then leave? Her head cants to the side, and I can't tell if her smile actually saddens or if it's simply the angle. Are you really that desperate to be away from me? I look away, to our reflections in the glass, made black by the darkness. It feels like looking through a window into a shadow version of ourselves, the girls who could have existed if Joanna and I hadn't fought. Maybe, if things had gone differently, I'd be here as an attendant at her wedding, invited and wanted and not kicking my feet in the corner. Or maybe we'd neither of us be here. Maybe we'd have run away together long ago, gone to find her mother who had left her, and her father when she was a child, or found a world of our own away from all of this. Miss Joanna, someone calls, and we turn as a very blonde, very pretty girl with a very narrow waist comes over to us. She wraps an arm around Joanna's stomach from behind and cuddles into her neck. Max leans into them both. The girl looks up at me with enormous blue eyes. Who's this? This is my friend Felicity Montague, Joanna replies. We grew up together. Oh, in England? You've come so far. The girl holds out her hand to me over Joanna's shoulder. Christina Gottschalk. With her hand in front of her stomach and out of Christina's sight, Joanna holds up a single finger and mouths to me, "That's one." I almost laugh. Christina gives me a smile I'm not sure I believe is genuine, then turns her face back up to Joanna. "I have to give you a scolding." "Me?" Joanna presses a hand to her breast. "Why?" "Your Dr. Platt about scared my poor girl to death last night." A conversation I was about to be forced to tolerate has just become sincerely interesting to me, as it involves Platt. Perhaps I'll actually be quite good at socializing after all. "What happened?" I say. "My maid went last night to fetch me milk, and he gave her a terrible scare," Christina says. "He was up in the library at God knows what hour, pacing and jabbering to himself. Said he started to shout at her for creeping about." Joanna runs a finger across the rim of her glass. She does not look at all thrilled by this conversation topic. "Yes, he's a bit of a maniac when he's doused." "That's the peril of marrying a genius, isn't it?" Christina says. "They're either depressingly gloomy or terribly insane, sometimes both at once." "Is he often in the library?" I ask. Joanna's eyes narrow at me. She knows exactly the game I'm playing, but won't give it a name in front of her friend. "He works late and sleeps late. It's his way. We don't see him until supper most days." "And not even supper today," Christina says, which is perhaps meant to make Joanna feel better, but instead has her sucking in her cheeks again. If Dr. Platt is hanging about the Hoffman Library, alone each night, that will give me the perfect opportunity to chat with him. Without butlers or gentlemen, or my inability to have articulate conversations with no warning getting in the way. But Joanna has me trapped, both in this conversation, which is turning into a discussion of melon water in comparison to cucumber for a smooth complexion, and by my promise to speak to 3 new people. There has to be a way to create a good reason to slip away and position myself and wait for Dr. Platt without wasting time making good on that promise. So the next time Max knocks into me, I use it as an excuse to empty my wine glass down my front. I only intended for it to be a dribble, a small splatter that would give me enough reason to say I just have to run back to my room and change, but in truth, sneak down to the library and wait for Platt. It is, however, a more effective display than planned. Firstly, I had not drunk as much as I thought, so rather than a few small drops discreetly spilled, I pour almost a full glass of wine straight down the front of my dress. It's such a direct shot that I can feel it soak all the way into my knickers. Joanna and Christina both shriek in surprise. I open my mouth to make an excuse and pretend like I have just spilled a normal amount of drink, rather than poured a glass down my front. But before I can get a word out, Max leaps at me, trying to lick it off. His weight sends me flying backwards. I throw out a hand to steady myself, miss my mark at the edge of the buffet table, and smash it straight into the creamy centre of a plate of entremets. Max, with now even more opportunity for carnage, leaps forward, paws upon the table, and plunges his nose in after me, splattering me with thick globs of cream. It effectively grinds the party to a halt. It's also a bit more embarrassing than I had expected it to be, particularly considering that I was the architect of the disaster. Well, the first part at least. Joanna apologizes over and over as she wrestles Max off the food, long strings of saliva trailing from his lips to the pastry as he tries desperately to gulp a few more bites before Joanna reaches down his throat and pulls out an entire metal spoon he inhaled in his haste. She's covered up to her elbow in slime. I've got wine down the front of my dress and pastry cream splattered across my side and fur clinging to both. Christina has a small splatter of wine on her skirt and seems intent on pretending she is as victimized as I am. I'm so sorry, I say, and Joanna looks up from Max. I can see in her eyes she knows exactly how intentional this was, whether or not I meant for it to ruin the party. Just go, she says, her voice so low no one hears but me. It's what you wanted, wasn't it? And yes, it's exactly what I wanted. But as I make my way, head down, tail tucked, to the exit, I rather wish it hadn't been. Sim isn't in our shared room, which is unfortunate as it leaves me with the task of getting myself out of this dress alone. The rules of fashion dictate that anything a man wears, a lady must wear more of. It must be more uncomfortable for her, and it must require at least 2 people to get her into and out of it so that she is rendered incapable of an independent existence. I can't even reach the damn buttons running up the back, let alone unfasten them. I keep turning in circles like a dog chasing its tail, trying each time to stretch my arm just a bit farther, while holding on to the deranged hope that perhaps if I catch the buttons by surprise, they won't dart away from me. And every second I waste spinning is a second I might be missing Dr. Platt in the library. At last I give up, decide to wear the wine with confidence, even though it's starting to turn from sticky to crunchy, and head below stairs. The gentlemen's party in the parlour is still loudly in progress, so I make a quick slip into the library in case the hairy-eared butler is lurking, ready to send me back to Joanna's rooms. The room is warm and smells like dust, and just the presence of so many books makes it easier to breathe. It's remarkable how being around books, even those you've never read, can have a calming effect. Like walking into a crowded party and finding it full of people you know. What are you doing here? I spin around with a squeak. Sim is standing behind me, lurking in between 2 of the stacks, and either unaware or unperturbed by the scare she just gave me. Soon, don't do that. Do what? Address you? Sneak up on me like that, or sneak around full stop. People will think you're up to something. What people? You people? Yes, me people. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be a maid, remember? I'm fairly certain this room is off limits. I'm cleaning it. She sweeps a sleeve along the nearest shelf without looking at it. There, all clean. Have you found your birthright yet? I ask. It's too dark to really tell, but I swear I hear her eyes narrow. Have you talked to your Dr. Platt yet? Is that it? I point to the large leather book she's got tucked under her arm, and she immediately pushes it behind her skirt. Is what it? The book you're ineffectively hiding. You can't take it with you. No stealing, remember? That's our agreement. Is it what you're looking for? She doesn't say anything, so I hold out my hands. May I? Reluctantly, she surrenders. It's not a book, I realise, as I carry it over to one of the reading stands with a lit lantern upon it, but more a folio. The cover is monogrammed with the initials S.G. and a date almost 20 years previous. Inside are intricate botanical drawings, cross-sections of tulip bulbs and mulberry trees, the delicate veins of leaves mapped like tributaries, and a whole page dedicated to the many ways of looking at a mushroom. It's all done in the sort of minute detail that makes my hands shake just to think of attempting it. I look up at Sim, standing on the other side of the lectern, watching me turn the portfolio pages with her teeth working on her thumbnail. Did you come all the way here to look at a book about nature? I ask. She keeps her nail in her mouth, speaking through gritted teeth around it. Why does it matter? It doesn't, I say. That's just very much something I would do. She stops grinding her teeth. Then a slow smile spreads over her lips. And here you thought we'd had nothing in common. I turn another page and stare down at a sketch of a long snake moving through the water. its nostrils bobbing above the surface. I can't imagine what it is about this work that drew her from a continent away just to see it. I thumb the edges, realizing that more than anything it's a relief. No matter Sim's protestations otherwise, and that she came to me through Scipio, a small part of me has been chewing its fingernails with certainty that she was here to slit a throat or steal a diamond, and I would be complicit for the access I provided. What's so special about this book? I ask. It's not a book, it's a portfolio, she replies, and it's the only copy. Well, yes, I assumed that if it existed somewhere else, you would have had picked it up from a printer in London. Of course you did. I look up, and through the sallow glow of the lantern, our eyes meet. In this light, her skin looks bronzed, something burnished and worn into battle by ancient warriors. It would have saved you a lot of trouble. Maybe I wanted the trouble. There's a snap behind us as the latch of the library door clicks open. Have a good evening, someone calls, then the creak of hinges as it's closed again. We're out of sight, tucked between the shelves, but I can hear footsteps down the next aisle over, heading towards the fireplace. I nearly trip over myself in the haste to grab Sim and shove her out of the room. She tries to take the folio with her, but I slap it shut and shake my head. No thieving. I'm not thieving, I'm looking, she hisses in return. It's not stealing just because you take something from where it belongs. That is the actual definition of stealing, I reply, my voice louder than I mean for it to be. For through the stacks, a man calls. Is someone there?
And then?
And then?
And then? What happens next?
And then? I guess we're just going to have to wait until tomorrow. You're going to have to...
I guess you just have to keep going.
Yeah, I think it's probably best that you just keep reading.
Cliffhanger.
You just have to keep reading.
Yeah.
Ah!
Yeah, you know, like just hit the hour. You could totally keep reading for a bit longer if you felt like it.
No. Sorry, guys.
Okay. It's
Wait.
okay. I'm really good at patience and stuff like that. I'm very patient.
Frankie would be proud. Just like I did read through this bit for a while, thinking where if I need to stop later than this, where is a good place to stop? And there isn't a good place. So
Well, it is an excellent cliffhanger. It's a very, very good place to stop. But it is mean.
Yeah, you made us like Frankie level mad, so good job. Or I can only speak for myself that I'm like Frankie level mad, like fuck you. Beautiful.
Thank you. That actually means a lot.
I'm really glad. You nailed it, bud.
And now
I hate you.
I hate you too. Now I know that it takes me about 30 pages per reading, so I can calculate how long the rest of this is going to take, but we've gone that much through it already. That's what we've done.
Awesome.
That's pretty far.
Oh, night, Carmen. Sleep well.
Sleepy Carmen.
It's just so great to, I think it would have been irritating to me to have someone else than Frankie read the same character's voice. As in, if this book had been like a sequel from the perspective of Monty, it would have been weird to hear it in your voice. But since it's from a different person's perspective, it's totally fine and it's great.
I really like that. Yeah.
I'm not even attempting like the levels of like Frankie voices.
Yeah.
She's too good at it. She has several different accents. She has several different like ways of speaking, and I'm just like learning that. So like that's good. I'm really glad that you're having a good time with it, Jenny, because that was something I was worried about actually.
Yeah, it feels very different. It feels very you, but also I think Frankie is great at doing the ruggedly drunken debaucherous vibe. Like I can see Frankie melding into this. And I feel like as a neurodivergent person, I relate to this character more than Monty. So I'm guessing that you probably do too. And like you pull off the like super interested in science, but also completely disinterested in things that you're just straight up not interested in things very well. The special interest vibe you've got going on, it's like top tier.
It's a special interest vibe.
But also the gay vibe.
How many of the bones of the human body can you name? Good lady.
So much. You have nice eyebrows.
Girls Night Out chat.
I think you have genuinely asked this before, like in that context.
This is the kind of question I would also ask.
I can name all of them, I think.
We know you can, Jenny. You're
Dr.
you're a
Jenny.
golden god. We know this already.
They're like,
That's right. Sorry, still not used to it.
These are carpals, right? Is that right?
Carpals
Yes.
and metacarpals, but there's like
Metacarpals.
a lot of carpals.
Oh, like
Tiny,
all bunched
tiny
up.
ones. I
What
don't
are
know.
these? Are these phalanges?
Yes.
Phalanges.
Medial and the distal and
Tarsals and metatarsals are the feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. I see. See, I feel like Jenny would absolutely like well clear the bar of like Felicity being friends with her.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh
I
yeah,
love
Felicity
this
would be in
story.
utter awe.
Yeah, Felicity would be like, "Oh my god!"
Teach me.
Like, and the little bits and pieces in this reading of like them all having like powder on their faces. This would be the 1700s. So would this be the time when that would be just like lead?
probably.
Possibly.
So that, yeah, shit's fucked.
Smart
glad
Felicity
she's not
never
wearing
put it
any.
on her face. Yeah. I love her. I forgot. Oh no. Okay, there we go. I love Felicity having these moments with Joanna of their friendship from back then reappearing and slowly coming in and melding in and then finding each other again and settling back into that, and the surprise but genuine apology.
Yeah, and the fact that she's like, she's reluctant to be feeling the feelings that she's feeling about her, and like reluctant to recognize that there was true friendship there.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to just be mad about it.
Yeah, and to not talk to that person and to assume that you were right the whole time.
I'm from Stuttgart, by the way.
Stuttgart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so pleasantly surprised, by the way, that to find that Alexander Platt did not have, in fact, like some dude's disinterred remains as like a medical exhibit or something.
Yeah.
We don't know that yet. There's more of the library to explore.
Wait, is the folio made out of her dead dad? Oh no. What's it called? Dermo something.
Oh, when you mix the leather for the binding of books out of human skin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that shit's fucked.
Yeah, that's what I. Okay, that's my prediction.
That's the
why
technical
she
term.
wants-
That shit's fucked.
That's why
Yeah.
she wants the folio, because it's made out of that. Stuff.
Oh, remember Rather Weird? There's something along those lines in it.
Oh, gross.
Delightful girl.
But it's in like
one of us.
the second or third book.
I mean, there are, I think, a couple of books left in the world that are bound in human skin, I've heard.
Oh, wow.
That makes me uncomfortable.
Me too. They're in museums, I think, somewhere in medical museums. Ugh.
I'm kind of grossly fascinated by this.
Fair. For an abrupt change of topic, can I tell you about something delicious I made yesterday?
Please
Yes,
do.
please.
Yes.
We made salted caramel pretzel vegan ice cream and made the caramel out of dates and just like blended up some fucking dates and vanilla and milk, and holy shit, it was so good.
Wow.
Ooh, wow.
The pretzels are a little bit soggier today, but we left some chopped up to the side to just put on top of it in bowls later so that you get the fresh crunch. Holy shit. And it was surprisingly easy. Just a lot of blending.
Awesome. I still got to decide on a cake for the party on Saturday. Any suggestions?
I'm a carrot
What was the
cake
question?
person. Cake.
I have to decide on a cake for my birthday party on
Chocolate.
What kind of flavors do you like?
Saturday. Like chocolate is definitely gonna be in it somewhere.
Are you making this yourself, or are you getting somebody else to make it?
I'm probably making it myself. I like baking, so yeah.
I can send you a recipe for a very grown-up cake. It's like an orange upside down cake with rosemary syrup, and it's fucking delicious.
Wow.
Can I have that, please?
Absolutely, yeah. I could just like post it on the Storytime page if you guys want.
Yeah,
Yes.
that sounds smart. Other
what
people want it and don't know that.
What is an upside down cake?
You can have pineapple.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, wow. You made a pie with the Play-Doh that I made. So I didn't know it was not muted.
That's okay.
Her ran off in the middle of story time. It should really have been her bedtime already, but apparently she's been making a pie with Play-Doh that Michael made for her. Yeah, they can't see you, love, because there's no light in here. Yeah, I was like trying to discreetly listen to story time with my headphones and with my iPad off under my pillow, and then I was just like asking me to get story time out on the screen and make lyric bigger, which I can't do. Yeah. Who's that one? Who's that one? Make that one bigger, which is Bracken. Yeah. So you made a pie. And what's the other thing you made?
Strawberry.
Oh, wow.
Strawberry?
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
For the caterpillar.
With a
For the
caterpillar.
caterpillar. Oh, yeah. She makes a caterpillar and then makes things to feed to the caterpillar, and they become part of the caterpillar. It's great.
That's amazing. The caterpillar grows when it eats.
Yeah.
So smart.
Oh, I was going to say something about the Joanna Felicity friendship thing. I was really enjoying it because it's like it puts a very like no, not like the other girls nonsense thing in the story.
It's this.
Totally.
Which kind of there might be a little bit of if they were to just stick with not being friends.
I also loved the part where Joanna was like up to her elbow covered in slobber by her dog, and that was just like a flashback to their childhood.
Pulling a spoon out of the dog's mouth.
Yeah.
I saw Andy's face at that and I was trying really hard not to laugh.
Also the part where, I mean, I was concerned for the dog because it almost swallowed a spoon.
Oh, yeah, so the orange upside down cake, an upside down cake, you would normally have like a pineapple upside down cake, which is where you have the pineapple slices first on the bottom of the tin, and then you pour the batter on top of it, and then you bake it, and then you turn it upside down when it's finished, and you get like this nice display of the pineapple pieces on top of the cake. But this is with orange slices, and it's really, really nice. You like boil the orange slices in syrup beforehand, so they're candied on top of the cake, and then you can like then it's like a Madeira cake type thing in the like actual sponge of it, and there's like almond flour in there, like ground almonds in there, which makes it really like nice and moist. And then you have this rosemary syrup that you make that you drizzle on top at the end, and you can make it look really nice with a couple of sprigs of rosemary on top. So it's very tasty. It's extremely tasty. It's extremely like zesty and orangey and like bright, and it's got that like nice herbiness to it as well. Even if you decide not to make it at this particular occasion, I will send it to you so that you can make it for yourself at some other time, because it's
yes, please. It sounds awesome. It sounds like a bit more work than I had planned.
Yeah, it's like a day activity.
But it sounds awesome. You think you could make
It does sound so nice.
lactose free? Does it have any dairy in it?
It does, but I have made it vegan before. And I can send you like this recipe doesn't have
A bite?
This?
Yeah.
This recipe doesn't have a vegan option, but I use a different recipe for the actual like cake part.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll send you that too.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not vegan, but I bake vegan very often because I just don't bother to buy eggs. And also I was newly diagnosed as lactose intolerant, so now I'm going even more vegan than than I already am. Which is why I asked.
I have a nice vegan carrot and orange muffin recipe, which I made a cake out of for Araha's birthday, and it was good.
Awesome.
Carrot, that sounds lovely too.
And
Yeah,
I can imagine if
one?
you wanted to, if you wanted some chocolate to be somehow in there, you could just do a chocolate icing for it. It would probably work quite nicely.
Yeah, chocolate icing on a carrot cake sounds good as well.
Yeah,
Tara,
especially with orange in there. Yeah.
I'm going to post the recipe for my cake in Storytime. Do you want to put yours in the comments there so that I can try your recipe?
Yes, I just remembered that it's in Portuguese, so, so I have to translate it. Jenny can probably read it, because I feel like if you speak some Romance language, then you can read a recipe in another one.
Read Spanish and Portuguese.
Yeah, exactly. So I will give it to Jenny anyway, and then I'll see about translating it to put it in the comments too.
Thank you.
I love that there's just going to be a random cake thread potentially. No context cakes. I find it pretty easy to make most recipes vegan too for baking. I do a lot of flax eggs. So just like ground flax in water in the fridge, 5 to 10 minutes. It gets kind of jelly. Works pretty well for most things. And like flaxseed.
Ah, flaxseed, okay.
Yeah, if you buy it ground, it'll turn into this jelly texture. If you Google flax egg, they'll have the exact ratios. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it works really well.
If you buy it whole, you can just grind it up. If you have, like, I just use my stick blender to grind it. I prefer to do that because ground flaxseed doesn't keep that well. And so
I always go through mine fast.
I think
if you're doing a lot of baking, it would be fine. I don't do that much vegan baking.
I think I have some vegan egg substitute somewhere as well. Like just a little packet. I don't even know what's in it exactly, but
yeah, I like flax eggs. You can also do chia eggs.
I haven't done them before, but I've heard good things.
Yeah, it's very different. I had done flax once for a while, and then I didn't have flax seeds and tried it with chia, and it just went like a lot gluggier than I was expecting. But It's just because I didn't look how to do it. Yeah, you did make a bowl. Anyway, yay for baking. I never really used to do baking. I only started since being a parent. For not really any related reason, I think. But it's nice. I need to make a cake for, well, if they like cake, some people who came and drilled holes in our walls so that we could get these shelves attached to the wall so that like nobody pulled them down on top of themselves by accident. And that was very helpful of them, so I want to make them a cake. To ask them what they like.
That's super wholesome.
It's weird in pandemic times to offer to cook things for people you don't know. I think like some people might not actually want you to. I'm not really sure, but
I think that's why asking about flavors is good though, because it gives them an opening to be like, actually, I'm not really comfortable taking baking in a pandemic, but thank you, I really appreciate that.
yeah, yeah, these people in particular, I think they will be fine with that, but it's
Yeah, I'm also like with my theater people, I'm not worried about that because we spend so much time with each other already. Like if I had corona, they'd catch it through theater with
yeah,
me.
I mean, pretty much why I'm guessing they will be fine is because they just, when they came, they just kind of invited themselves in and stayed for maybe 2 hours. So
Hi, Raj. Don't know if they're listening.
hey, I'm glad you're getting to do this play. It must be so nice, Jenny. I'm glad you're getting to do Macbeth. It must be so nice.
Yeah, it's so awesome to just also have a group of people that I can come home to like 3 nights a week, which is just,
that would be amazing.
yeah, and just not having like, since it's always the same people, not feeling bad about it corona wise. So,
yeah. Just being one consistent group. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty awesome. And the funny thing is I didn't know most of them beforehand, like it's loads of new people. But I've been basically rehearsing with them for about 2 weeks now, and I feel completely integrated. It's just like an awesome bunch of people. They're really cute, really cool people, and we even started shooting an art house film in our costumes on Saturday. Because we just love our costumes so much.
Oh my god, that's so cool.
It's
That is so
accidentally
awesome.
gonna be pretty good, actually. Like I quote the main character who plays Macbeth. He directed this film, and he was like, "Okay, folks, for the next take, please change places. We need some continuity fails so that we don't actually accidentally make a good movie." You know?
That sounds like something that you would do.
Do what, sir?
Just like deliberately put in continuity fails into an art house movie.
We say goodbye to the catch-up crew.
We have not. It's still recording. Catch-up crew. I hope that you don't get knocked over by a dog and fall headfirst into a bunch of steam puff, or that if you do, it's a joyful experience.
And you get to name at least one bone in the human body.
Yeah.
Also comment on people's eyebrows if you don't know what else to say at a party.
Yes.
Yeah. And may you
Yeah,
have a
that's
nice
eyebrow.
rekindling with an old friend.
If nothing else, it'll be humorous.
Hey, catch-up crew.
Catch-up crew.